Hi everybody, welcome to the Matt Weston 365 YouTube channel. Today we're going to look at what we do when something goes wrong within our flows in Power Automate. So it doesn't matter how good you think you are at Flow, or even how good you are as a developer if you come from a developer background. Something is always going to go wrong with your flows. Sometimes it's things that you may not have considered going wrong. Other times, it might be something that's happened behind the scenes. It might be something that the Microsoft gods have changed, and therefore your flow then starts to fail. So how can you handle your failures? How can you make sure that your flow is going to fail in a graceful manner? Now, when we came to do this in development, we used to use what was called a try-catch pattern. That means that we would try to do something. If something within that try failed or caused an error, then we would catch it and then we would do something else with it. That could be that we were going to send an email, we may be going to process things in a slightly different way. Now that same coding pattern can be applied to Power Automate and what we are doing within our API flows. Now Pieter Vienstra, a very good MVP friend of mine, he published this as a template probably a good couple of years ago now. But it's one of those patterns that I don't see massively adopted. But I always recommend it whenever I talk about good practice for flows, because if I can handle my errors, then it means that I can then react to them in a slightly better way than just waiting for that email to be sent to the owners saying this flow has failed. So how do we do this? Let's go and have a look at how we implement the basics. So for this demonstration, I'm going to use a very basic implementation of a flow. All I'm going to do is user compose, and I'm going to cause it eventually to fail. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an invalid data conversion. So I know that I'm going to be able to control when my errors actually fire. So if I go and put this in first of all, so I'm just going to go and create a compose action. And in my compose, I'm going to use my expression builder and I'm going to declare an integer. And I'm going to say that my integer is ABC. So this is always going to fail. So let's OK that. So now, if I just test and run this, then as you expect, my flow has failed because it can't convert ABC to an integer. So that's expected. But what will have happened if I just leave my error failing in or my flow failing in this way? Me as the owner, I would get an email to say my flow has failed. But that's not always what I want to happen. It might not be me who's actually getting the emails. It might be an unattended account. It might be that we want to send the emails or a notification to someone or somewhere else to let them know that the flow has failed and therefore it needs to be fixed. So let's look at how we implement the try-catch pattern. So let's come back and edit this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in two scopes to start off with. So scopes, if you've not used them before, these are designed to group together actions within my API flows. So for example, if I drop that one into there, I can have my compose inside my scope. And I'm just going to rename that scope to try. So at the moment, everything that gets contained within this scope will either succeed or fail based on all of the actions that get put in there. So the overall result of this scope will be either a pass or a success, or a fail. But I want to capture the failures. So I'm going to add another action and I'm going to go and add another scope. And this time, I'm going to call this my catch. So now I've got two parts to my flow. I've got my main bulk of logic, and I've got what I want to happen when something goes wrong. So I'm going to go and add something into here. And I'm going to say that I'm going to send an email. And I'm just going to use the send an email notification. So let's pop my email address in. The flow has failed. This flow has gone wrong. You need to fix it. Okay, so I've got an error message that's now being sent out. But with the way things are at the moment, the way that my flow is configured, my try scope will run, and then my catch scope will immediately run afterwards. Why is that? That's because of the way that the flow actions and scopes interact with each other. So hopefully most of you will have seen this before. If I click on my three dots, my ellipsis, and I go and configure my run after. So at this point, I'm going to define under what conditions are my scopes going to run. So in this case, my scope catch should run after. I don't want it to run if it's successful. I want it to run if something's gone wrong. So I'm going to say that it's failed. Now at the moment, watch this. I've got a solid black line here. As soon as I change it, it becomes a dotted red line. So now in the context of my flow, when I run this, if this fails, then my catch will run. If my try succeeds, then my catch won't. So I'm almost building that little bit of a intelligence into my flow. Say I only want you to run under a specific condition, i.e. a failure condition. Let's test it. Let's go and save. Let's go and test. I'll perform the trigger action. My flow runs successfully. So now my trigger runs, my try runs, but fails. Yeah, it's still struggling to convert ABC into an integer. Therefore, because that's failed, we've fallen across into my catch scope, and therefore my email has been sent out. So I've now sent an email to say that something has gone wrong. There's one more bit that I'm going to talk about just to really round off this part of the demonstration. So if I now look at my run history, so the first time I ran my test, it failed. The second time I ran it, it succeeded. But was it really a success? It was only a success because we managed to get to the end of the flow and finish it with a success state. And that's because of my catch scope. Now, it's completely up to you how you decide to handle your errors. Some people prefer to leave them as successes and just report the error otherwise. I personally still prefer to log them log them as an error. So from here, I can come and add one more action in here, and this is going to be my terminate. So the reason why I always like to put a terminate in the bottom of my catch is so that I can then specify the status that is going to be logged in the flow history. So for example, by default it will be succeeded. I can mark it as cancelled, or I can mark it as failed. So if I mark it as failed, I can also then supply my own codes and my own messages to help me with this. But the idea is that even though my flow fails, I'm still going to record it as a failure when I look in my flow history, but I'm also handling it graciously because I'm actually sending an email to alert a service desk or somebody else or a group of people, whatever it might be. I'm sending that alert out to say that something's gone wrong. So let's go and test this once more. So I'm going to go and run my flow. Okay, this time it does say my flow run has failed. Why? Because of this terminate. So I'm still capturing all the failure information. I'm still grabbing everything that I need. I'm handling the error, and I'm also logging it into my run history as a failure, so that at least when I go back and look at my run history, I can see which ones have failed. Now, just before we finish this video, what I'm going to show you is that there is a pattern in the templates that you can use to quickly and easily create that type of flow. So if I come into my templates, I have a try, catch, and finally template. If I just go and create one based on this template, if you are watching this, Peter, we still thank you for this. So there we go. I've got a try. I've got a catch where it's going to go and find some information about the person who's run this and then send them some relevant information. And then also on this one, we have a finally, which is where any additional actions which we need to run, regardless of whether it's succeeded or failed, can then complete. So that is available for you to use as a template, or you've seen how easy it is to go ahead and create your own from scratch just using a couple of scopes. So there we've looked at the basics of creating a flow which you can gracefully handle your errors. Really important that you don't just let them fail catastrophically, you don't just let them fail and do nothing with them. Good practice. Handle your errors. Make sure that they're logged. Make sure that the relevant people are being notified. Make sure it's more than just you who's being notified. Particularly if it's not, if it's a flow or a process that is going to cause major issues if you're not around to fix it. So make sure that you do alert other people so that the corrective actions can be taken and you are alerting them in the right way. What we're going to look at in the next video is how we can enhance this a little bit further, and we can add in the additional pieces of information potentially into our email. So we're going to track more detail about the flow, more detail about the failure, so that the notifications we send out are even more useful. But for now, I hope that was useful. Please do like and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you need to get hold of me, I'll be happy to answer any questions. You can reach me on Twitter at MattWeston365. You can find me on LinkedIn, again, at MattWeston365. Anything that you need, feel free to reach out and I'll be happy to give you a hand. Until next time, take care of yourselves and we'll speak soon.